one of the most infamous and controversial bands in the world. W.A.S.P, the 40th Never Stops World Tour with special guest, Armored Saint. W.A.S.P live. Go to waspnation.com for tour details and tickets. W.A.S.P, feel the sting.
Zoom lady speaking. Welcome. I bid you welcome. This is Johnny Metal, John Clauser, the Metal Dad, coming to you from my music corner of the world. And with me on this journey we call W.A.S.P Wednesday is my fellow running man, my fellow ecstasy rider, my Jesse to my Judah. I'm talking about John the Music Nut. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well, brother. How about you?
I don't know about you, but this album that the next 2 weeks that we're getting into here, I think I bit off a little more than I could chew.
You too?
My goodness gracious. Golly. I mean, I thought, at least with Crimson Idol, I felt like I had the history because that album was so ingrained in my DNA.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get talking about the Neon God, and this is just part one,
right?
There's so much more than I could have even imagined to talk about here. As I usually when we've done these, usually I really start like heavy listening to the album again, especially with these last few that I've not had the history with. I start listening to them pretty intense, like a couple of days before, and I can usually get my thoughts together pretty quickly. This one, not quite so much. I even did a video where I recorded myself. There's a like in Crimson Isle, there's a story in this in the CD booklet, and I decided to video myself reciting this story just for part one. I didn't do part two yet, but it's not as long, but part one's pretty long. It took me about a half an hour to read it, or 35 minutes or something like that. But anyway, even as I'm reading it, I'm like, what have I gotten myself into here? Oh my gosh, this thing is like major deep stuff here. I was flabbergasted. I'm like, I should have started thinking about this about 3 months ago. But anyway, yeah. So just real quick, I'm going to talk about some chart positions, as I always do with the different albums here. For part one, Finland comes back here. He reaches number 26. France, number 176. German again, number 87, and back to Sweden with also number 26. I can make it easy for Neon God Part 2. No charts. So that's the easiest part of this whole thing. So and I think there are favorable reviews on this thing. We'll get more into that as I let the W.A.S.P Nation kind of talk about what they thought at the end of this. But for now, John the Music Nut, you lucky bugger. Let's hear it. Let's tackle this monster.
All right. Thank you, John. So there are some parallels here with Crimson Idol. Now, I'm saying parallels. I'm not saying this is a rewrite. This is a different story. As far as your musicians, now this is weird. Because I read this on the album, and I saw this on Wikipedia, which is 30% accurate. And then I looked at the album liner notes, which would be accurate. Blackie is listed on vocals, guitar, keyboards, bass, and drums.
Yeah. Huh?
And of course, he produced it. Okay, you would expect that. But okay, bass you'd expect because he did play bass on the first few albums. And I'm sure he played a little bass on some of the other tracks, but maybe he wasn't credited. But drums? Well, maybe he did. I don't know. But that's what the liner notes say. Daryl Roberts is back, bringing it on lead guitar, vocals, and drums. Maybe on the demos, maybe Blackie and Daryl did it. I don't know. Mike Duda, bass and vocals. You got Frankie Banali on drums and percussion, and Sted Howland plays drums on Wishing Well. This came out April 6, 2004. This is a 2-album rock opera, and this is Neon God The Rise. The other one will be The Demise. How's this album sound? It does have parallels with Crimson Idol, as I indicated before, but this is a story about Jesse, who was an orphan, and he was abused, and then this got into him, and over time he realized he could influence and control people. And this album, kind of like The Who's Tommy, has short interludes and acoustic parts that bring the story together. So it's not a loose concept at all. This is well thought out. Overture is what you'd expect. It's not as Titanic as the Titanic overture, but it's very good. It's very dramatic. Why Am I Here is just a short intro by Blackie. I mean, it is a musical intro. It's not just him speaking. And that goes right into Wishing Well. Now, Wishing Well has that same vibe as An Invisible Boy does. It has that drama about it. It's Frankie throwing in all those great fills. I'm sorry, this is Stet. But Stet's throwing in the fills like Frankie would do. And this is an excellent track. Very driving. Musically, it's very strong. It goes right into Sister Sadie and the Black Habits. This is like the Murders of the Rue Morgue in a way. Not quite as dramatic as that, but it would be one of the centerpieces on the album. This is another very strong track. Very well done. I mean, very graphic in the vocals, the lyrics as well. Yeah, as John is indicating right now, he ain't joking. The Rise is a short. It's 2 minutes and 30 seconds. It's a good song. That, again, it's going into the story. This is when the main character Jesse is, he got past questioning himself. He's trying to realize trying to figure out who he is. Okay, and that goes into Why Am I Nothing, which is a spoken word, and again, it's on that same level. It goes into Asylum Number 9. Asylum Number 9 kicks ass. Maybe my favorite track on the album. Asylum 9 has number 9. Great call and response in the verses between Blackie and Daryl's guitar lines. Excellent. It's got a great ride out in it as well. But great solo from Daryl here. The performances are excellent as always. I mean, they really brought it on Asylum Number 9. Very good track. I'd say it's a great track. Let's put it that way. The Red Room of the Rising Sun. Now, this song is slower. It's and you may have read this on AllMusic or other sites that talk about music. It's very reminiscent of the Beatles' Tomorrow Never Knows. It has that same feel, the same structure musically, especially as the song continues. I mean, you think this way as you're hearing the song, and then they go like practically into a version of it, but it is a very strong track. Again, What I'll Never Find. I just want to make sure I'm doing this in the right order. What I'll never find is the ballad of the album. Not on the level of their best ballads. One thing I could say about Blackie on this album, his vocals compared to earlier albums, those crazy screams that he would do on some of those the mid 90s albums, even a little on KFD, you don't really hear those now. He still sings very well, but those crazy screams like you'd hear on Invisible Boy, for example, he doesn't do that anymore, but his voice is still very strong. This is another strong track, What I'll Never Find, which is very good. And then goes into Someone to Love Me, which Someone to Love Me is that's a short interlude into XTC Riders. It's a very driving track, similar to their music from the 80s. Not lyrically, of course, but musically it's reminiscent of that. That's good. Me and the Devil's an acoustic interlude. Me and the Devil's the only lyric, but it's just a new music. It's just an interlude to go into The Running Man. And The Running Man, another great solo on here. And from Daryl, another strong track. The Raging Storm is the dramatic closer. It starts slow. It starts, again, reprises a few parts, I believe, earlier in the album. Daryl Roberts' solos are fantastic. It does, again, reminiscent of Crimson Idol, but the drumming is over the top, just like on earlier parts of this album, Crimson Idol as well. But the story is very well done. The lyrics, Blackie's lyrics have just gotten stronger and stronger over time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's one thing you could say. Lyrically, I'd probably put this over to Crimson Idol, and the storytelling, I would.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is it that masterpiece that it is? No, because some of the ideas you get the sense you've heard these before. But as far as a story, wow. I mean, I'm still trying to take this all in. Ooh. This I'm gonna go 8.5.
Ooh,
I think
okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 8.5 on this. This is one that I think is gonna continue to grow on me because I'm thinking 8.5. I'm thinking I really like Unholy Terror, but I like how this is a little more cohesive. I'm not gonna put this on Dying for the World level. But yeah, I'll go 8.5 on this. I was very impressed. I've been very impressed with these last 3 albums by W.A.S.P. Being very, very good.
Yep.
There you go. This is album number 11 by W.A.S.P. The Neon God Part 1, The Rise.
Good stuff. Yeah, it's a lot to take in. You know, this is probably one of the few. I probably reached for these almost about as much as I reached for Helldorado, but Helldorado for a different reason.
Right.
This is because you really need to take both albums in and to get the whole, as Paul Harvey would say, and now for the rest of the story. So you really want to get that whole story. So my thoughts, and I'm going to read my little essay thingy here. It's only about a page long here, but this is kind of how I broke all this down. So of course you have the overture. You got to have, if you're going to do something this dramatic, you got to have a wonderful overture to set that stage.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I here? I think it's a question that all of us ask at some point in our lives. In Jesse's case, he was probably asking it already before he was even 8 years old. In the story, he would learn that his father would pass away at 6, when he was 6 years old. His mother, Mary, was drug addict and basically, didn't want anything to do with him, basically called him the devil kind of thing. So why am I here? Again, a question that we all ask, but then you get that when you couple it with that feeling of abandonment, it becomes an even more powerful question. And Jesse asks, I think in this case, because he winds up being sent to an orphanage, has that the abandonment issue, which Blackie seems to come back to a lot.
Yes.
Which, when you listen to his upbringing, you don't get that feeling that that's how he grew up. So it makes you wonder where he's getting these abandonment ideas for stories, and that wanting for of love, that need for love that all of us crave. I mean, all of us have that craving. So Jesse would be dropped off at an orphanage when he was he was about 8. And as his mother would hope that his soul and his life would be salvaged, and that she would just go on and being the drug addict person that she would be. So she wouldn't see him for another many, many years to come. Life in the orphanage would prove to be a living hell. When you read through this story that Blackie writes out, he paints this as a very dark, almost like Victorian age, really. Because I mean, this is he's making this orphanage sound like the working houses that Dickens alludes to in like The Christmas Carol, and the prisons, that Scrooge was so happy to send the money towards. Well, not all of them want to go to those working houses or the prisons. They don't have the money to survive, so they have no choice. It really just paints such a dark picture here. And so as Jesse would stare out in the courtyard, he would see this old well in the middle of the courtyard. And it was a well that was used before the orphanage and the accompanying mental hospital would use for water before they had running water. That's how they got their water. And he would learn through other stories from the kids that was a wishing well, and that kids would make their wish, and these kids who had very little to live for and no hope would jump into that well in hopes that they would drown and die. That is how desperate these kids were for the attention and for the love. Yeah, we're getting deep here, folks. That's what Wishing Well gets into.
Yeah.
A stunning song, wonderful track. The nuns at this orphanage were very much the disciplinarians. Maybe one or two of them that he would find that were a little bit more sympathetic, but they were also under the iron fist of Sister Sadie, as he describes her as a 6'2", weighing 250 pounds. You think she's like a professional wrestler or something, but again, the way she ruled was almost, as he puts it, like an SS, like the Nazi SS.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, oh boy, this is, yeah. So when she would dish out the punishments, ooh, I won't even go into how he describes it. It's brutal. It's graphic. It sounds like it sounds like you're really in a prison camp. This again gets very, very heavy. And again, lyrically, it is kind of the Chainsaw Charlie figure a little bit. But again, much more graphic. The whole F for life. That's, and this is like, he's not even 10 years old at this point. And right. he's experiencing these awful traumas. And so after that, then he gets into his own act of desperation, and he goes to the wishing well, and he jumps in. And unfortunately, 3 days later, he wakes up from this coma. So he He survives this trip to the wishing well, but he would suddenly discover something, visions of who he was to become. So he starts having these visions of the invisible circus, which would become like a congregation to him. And this is where he starts understanding, and this is where the rise comes in. Okay, so you have this little, interlude here of the rise. So you have this starting up in his mind. So again, and then we come back to the next interlude here of why am I nothing? His mother would say, you will always be nothing. And I think I think these booklets had a lot of typos. Hence why I think Blackie and Daryl were on drums. I don't think they really played drums, but there's a lot of typos in these things. And I think there was a typo in this thing here when, how did she say? You are nothing. You will never be nothing. I think they meant anything. It's really what I meant. I think they meant to write in here. So but again, why am I nothing? Again, when this whole abandonment, looking for love, looking for any kind of attention, this positive affection. This is, and at this point, he's looking to the sky, to God for this one. When you read, this is the beauty of the lyrics, because again, you see who he's talking to, or who's leading the narrative in this case. And in this case, he's literally talking to God with this one. So when he was deemed not to be a danger to himself, he would then be transferred to the asylum number 9. And here in the story, he meets this character named Spasmo. Spasmo, a 16-year-old who was completely whacked out on drugs before he even got there. He worked for another fellow named Billy. Now, Billy's family had a lot of influence into the orphanage, maybe not so much on Billy, but he had, and there was a lot of money gearing towards Billy. So Billy was able to get all kinds of different drugs and all kinds of different hallucinogens, and but Asylum number 9, just to go to the song, just to deviate from this, what a song. One of my favorites from this album, that slow kind of galloping rhythm of this. Again, just a powerful rhythm and music to this. And the lyrics again, and Blackie's vocals, with the layers of vocals he puts with this thing. Just a wonderful track. Billy, because of his family's influence, had his own little room, and that was called the Red Room of the Rising Sun. Very decorated in hippie decor and all the hallucinogenics you could find. And yeah, this song is very Beatles influenced. You can hear it. It has that that Indian influence that the Beatles went through, kind of feel like Revolver, I believe, was that main influence there. And I believe Blackie listened to a lot of that. So yes, there is a lot of that in this song. But again, such a strong song. But you're hearing the depths of Billy's soul here in this song, and you could tell that Billy is leading up to his, as he's about to be, I guess, released from this own asylum, that he's like, I'm going to give my own going away party, as they also discovered Sister Sadie was dead by this point. So there again, What I'll Never Find and Someone to Love Me. These songs both tie in to Billy's character, because again, all Billy wanted was to be loved. That seemed like there was such a central theme in this all of these characters. They just wanted to be loved, and they weren't finding any. And so Billy, in his last act of desperation, takes an overdose of the sleeping pills, and he drifts off. And I think it's as all he wanted was someone to love me. And I hope you find me, and I hope that you find me. So by this point, you're into you're starting to get into where Jesse's character goes from here. He gets off, he's finally released from the orphanage. He's on the streets. He's basically homeless until he comes across this character named Judah, a little magician who's doing all kinds of little mind tricks and all kinds of little fun things. And he does this little thing where he does this envelope and all these different numbers. And Jesse asked him, well, why did you pick me? You seemed easy to pick. You didn't fight that. And I could read you. So he comes under the tutelage of Judah, and between Judah and Jesse, now we start, again, Judah's open to all these different kind of hallucinogenic drugs and all of it, and the ecstasy and all these different things. But my goodness, what a banger of a song this is. Gosh, that opening drum rhythm just bats you in the face.
Oh, yes.
Oh my goodness. What a pulsing rhythm this is. Great track. Definitely this Asylum Number 9, Wishing Well, and probably Sister Sadie, probably all of my favorite. Those are probably like all of my favorite tracks from this album. But there's just, again, I like pretty much the whole thing. Now, when we get into the Me and the Devil, you just hear this being kind of just spoken over and over and over. And at the end of the song, you hear Judah. So this is like Judah's influence, which I think maybe he was starting to already see that Judah was more of a devil in Jesse's life. So now you go into the Running Man. Now, this is mostly, I believe this is mostly Judah's, let me see here, mostly Judy to Jesse. Yes. I believe at this point, Jesse's starting to kind of come into his own as far as this neon god kind of thing. And Judah's just kind of pushing it. He's just turning him into this character that he's really feeding more off of this ability to read people and see through people. And so it becomes this crazy fellowship of congregant disciples. The take your love away from me, because I will blind your heathen reason. No, that's Jesse to the disciples. Yeah, because I will blind your heathen reason and ride us on your broken wings for love. Again, where's this? He's starting to see that he's becoming this kind of Messiah, but he's also starting to see that, no, I don't think that's not somewhere where I need to be. And then we get to the Raging Storm. Again, that's that end centerpiece, kind of like the Great Misconceptions of Me. Mm-hmm. Starting to see that, maybe, again, talking to God here, a storm has come, one war of sun and rain within me. There's a storm raging inside for his soul. And I don't think he knows who to believe anymore. Whether is Judah the one to believe? Who knows? He doesn't even know. But again, we get to that chorus, give me love, to rage in me can you see, get only love. And this vocal just soars to the heavens. And you can hear the cry and the desperation in Blackie's vocal in this part. You can literally hear the fry in his vocal with this. But again, you hear Daryl Roberts with that slide part in there as to call an answer to that. And it's like, I love that part of the song. So again, you get this holy war for the soul. The scars of memories remain, which again, he has this absolutely traumatized past. Tell me why I'm here. The storms of crossroads and rage. This album is just, again, there's just so much here that I don't even think I could even, there's certainly no way I can even unpack this. But to end, I'm just going to end this little bit with reading from the end of the part 1 story. These were all a vicious circle of questions. Let me go back a little bit. The magnitude of the phenomena of our ministry became truly frightening when I would get small glimpses of myself and what I was doing to those around me, especially Judah. Had I been put on this earth to do what I was doing, was I God? Was I a piece of God in the sense that we are all part of God? Am I a prophet? Am I a messenger of God? Was I just a man with my own message born out of no love? Am I evil? Am I the great deceiver? Or does God even know I exist? There is so many. These are all a vicious circle of questions that had become living torture. My soul was in balance. My soul was in balance. My soul was in perpetual transition. My soul, the prize for the eternal war of two masters. Was I in the Garden of Eden? And if so, which one was I? And again, there is so much to unpack in just doing this show. I don't think I can even, there's no way I could answer any of these questions. But he was already starting to see, much like Brian in Life of Brian, for all you Monty Python fans, he knew he wasn't the Messiah, even though everybody kept looking to him as the Messiah. He knew he wasn't the Messiah. And what was his mother's line? He was just, he's not the Messiah. He's a naughty boy, something along that line.
Yeah.
I didn't prepare for that line. So anyway, but here again, there's so much to unpack. We could spend weeks talking about the stuff on this album. I think it is one that I have to listen to as a full piece, but there's just so much to digest. So yes. What do I give this album? I would probably give this about an 8 or 8 to an 8.5. And I'll let you kind of throw some other thoughts out before I get into the W.A.S.P Nation, because I think there's some other things with this album that I hope that when you hear what the W.A.S.P Nation has to say, that will maybe enhance some thoughts of you. So let's hear what else you might have that you have on in your list there.
Well, as far as just to reemphasize, I mean, Blackie just got really deep with his lyrics here, and there was always this in him. I mean, as discovered on Headless Children, Crimson Idol. But here he really went deeper, and this is one that it's worth revisiting just to listen to the lyrics alone. If you were to say, okay, he's repeating some of the same musical ideas, that's a fair assessment. But they're done so strong and so well that it doesn't really it takes very little away from the album. As far as the tour dates, well, they went back out on the tour with a vengeance. Just to let everyone know out there. John indicated that this album made some waves in Europe, and the band discovered that. They did 79 dates in 2004 for part 1. After their first date at the House of Blues in West Hollywood, California, United States, they did several dates in Europe. Excuse me, they did about 6 weeks in Europe, and they went all over. I'm not going to go into the venues, but I'll tell you the cities. And I think a lot of you, as soon as I say the city, you'll know what country they're in. Glasgow, Dublin, Manchester, Nottingham, London, Bugarhots, Stockholm, Oslo, Copenhagen, Helsinki, Vienna, Madrid, Barcelona, France. So he went all over Europe, and all those cities that I mentioned. I mean, I'm sure they did really well on all of these dates. And after that, they went back to the US in June of 2004, and they did play some venues that they've played in the past that we've mentioned here on the series. They hit the Cotton Club in Atlanta, Georgia. They hit the Jacks again in Springfield, Virginia. They hit the Starland Ballroom in Sayersville, New Jersey, which is still putting a lot of great music on. And they were back at Mulcahy's in Wonton, New York. They also played Sunshine Theater in Albuquerque, DNA in San Francisco, Bluebird in Denver, Colorado, Backroom in Austin, Texas, Ball and Cork in Dewey Beach, Delaware. I think I've mentioned that venue here before. Harpo's in Detroit, we've certainly mentioned here before. And they hit a lot of different House of Blues venues as well. As far as the songs on the tour from this album, they primarily played two from the Neon God, The Rise. And those songs are, and they play them together. They play What I'll Never Find and Sister Sadie and the Black Habits. So they went back out on tour again with a vengeance after taking a few years off, play a lot of the same venues, and they did bring back well, they actually had this on their previous tour, I believe. They did My Tortured Eyes a lot on this tour, which is from KFD. And I believe they, on some dates, they played Hate to Love Me from Unholy Terror, which is a song that I love that song. So yeah, they did bring back some songs from earlier albums on here, and then they brought out the big guns as they always do. But
the usual suspects.
The usual suspects, which you all know and love. So yeah, so that's the tour for the Neon God.
Okay.
Part one.
All right. So now let's hear from the W.A.S.P Nation. I'll tell you what, y'all spoke out big time on this one. So and some of it's mixed.
Mm-hmm.
So Tero Pesu, to me, the worst albums together with Eldorado. Okay. Interesting. Gary Simmons Jr., part one is better. Stuart Lidbury, never liked it, to be honest. After KFD, they seemed to lose themselves until Mr. Blair and Dookie, and then they never looked back. Three absolutely brilliant albums. So I'm thinking he's referring to Dominator, Babylon, and Golgotha, which we will get into.
Yes.
Let's see. Anders Persson, I really like part one. Raging Storm is an amazing song. I agree, Anders. That's what the more I listen to it, the more I love it. Terrence Murdoch, loved both of them. Tom Volanek, love them. Colleen Johnson, love them both. Probably picking Rise over Demise. Charles Baylor, Ecstasy Riders is a great song. Volume 1 is definitely better of the two. And I agree that Eldorado is the worst W.A.S.P album. Coma Cat, Asylum Number 9 is an awesome song, but I like all of part 2 as it has a much better sound. Part 1 is very trebly. Taj Alver, some incredible songs on there, but I don't love the production. So I'm going to pause here let me see. There was one more. There was somebody else that, okay, I'll get back to that. Okay, so let me just pause there. What did you think of when you're listening to this? What did you make of the sound of in the production of the album?
I didn't think it was I thought it was a good production, not a great one. I think the album we're going to talk about next week, I think the guitars are more in the forefront. Mm-hmm. Here, it does seem like some of the sound blends together more. It's not, you can't hear all the instruments distinctly like you can on some of their other albums. I mean, it's good, but they've definitely done better productions in this. What do you think, John?
Yeah, to me, and I have to give my credit to some credit here to Dawn the Chaldean. Dawn, if you're watching this, hey, we miss you. I haven't seen you in ages. Anyway, I saw her comment about somebody had posted about the Golgotha album on the History of 5 Songs chat group on Facebook. And she talked about that, how she liked that album because you could finally hear Blackie's voice, because it seemed like for some previous albums, he was trying to sing over this incredible wall of sound.
Okay. And
that, to me, that's what kind of the Neon Gods suffer from, is you have this immense wall of sound, and then you get these really harsh and really good. I mean, also some very good vocals, but there's like a really harsh mixing master to this as well. So that everything, it just seems like everything's turned up to 11 on this one. So yeah, that's kind of where it doesn't. I have to admit, even in listening to it in headphones, I have to turn it down because it's almost a little too much even for my headphones. Mm-hmm. So there you go. So getting back into the what the W.A.S.P names, Herman von Roll. These aren't the worst W.A.S.P albums, but they are two I like the least. But they are the two I like the least. I've listened to them a few times, and the only song that stands out to me is the Red Room of the Rising Sun. The rest of the songs just go by without sticking in my head, and that's not W.A.S.P. Even a crappy album like El Dorado had a bunch of dumb but catchy songs on it. I have to give him that. He's although I think a lot of the songs from Neon God sticks in my head. You know, Asylum Number 9 and Sister Sadie, and some of those songs I think kind of speak for that.
Yes.
Jorge Bafame, Asylum Number 9 or Ecstasy Riders is beautiful. Carlos Luga, The Crimson Isle gained recognition and is a masterpiece. That being said, Blackie always talked about how hard it was to conceptualize and create Crimson, and how he wouldn't like to endure creating something similar. The Neon God is like a forced attempt to capitalize the concept album thing. Seemed like a hurried second disc storyline. He even grabbed and mixed stuff from Crimson. Same thing happened to Queensryche with Operation Mindcrime when they did Mindcrime 2. You know, to this day, I still have never listened to Mindcrime 2.
It's been a long time, and I think I only listened to it once, and it just didn't grab me. And I said that on another show.
Yeah.
Where I love the original.
Let's see. Paul Southern, Part 1 is so underrated. The tour that promoted the album was awesome. Just a shame they don't play songs off that album live anymore. And as you mentioned, they only played a couple of them anyway.
Right.
Damien King. It could have been a really strong single album, but as a double disc, there's some filler. But there are some excellent songs on both albums, especially the first, like Sister Sadie, Asylum Number 9, Ecstasy Riders, and all great tracks. Michael Perry, love both Neon God albums. Matt Barfield, Asylum Number 9 was my favorite from both. Gary Sharkey, love them both. Brian Sherman, solid albums in desperate need of a remix and proper non-brick walled mastering. Jorge Lawless, although not a great record, it's a pretty acceptable album. It lacks the Crimson's versatility, which makes it too repetitive. And I think Blackie made the mistake of copying himself, but despite it all, it has memorable moments like, I think he says a song here that I'm not sure what it is. It's not on this one, or like Me and the Devil, I think is what he meant to say. Also is, that's not even a full song. Right. Also, it was a mistake to take both sides independently when it had to come out as a double disc. Eric Jordan, they have a few good songs, but could never get into these albums. Fred Escher, whatever Asylum Number 9 and Sister Sadie are as good as anything he has ever done. Thingamajig, best songs for me: Ecstasy Riders, Raging Storm, What I'll Never Find off Part 1, and then I won't go into what he says on Part 2. I'll save that for next week. But as a whole, I prefer listening to Part 1 more than 2. What Blackie does do exceptionally well is those ballad type songs. I'll agree with that. Seth Worsham, I love the concept, and both were amazing. What I'll Never Find is one of the greatest songs about loss I've ever heard. Asylum Number 9, Sister Sadie, list goes on. Bravo, Blackie. Rob Luton, never gave it a good listen. Too much to swallow as a whole. I agree. Let's see. Maria Grazia Ferri, my dear new W.A.S.P friend from Italy. I love the concept, even if the story is more complicated than the Crimson Isle. Yes, I agree. We both agree.
Yes.
Many songs are wonderful. Sister Sadie, Room of the Rising Sun, What I'll Never Find, Ecstasy Riders. And then we go into the second half. Really beautiful album, full of mystery and glamour. I'm not sure if she meant misery or glamour, but mystery also would work. Kevin Robinson, I like all of the releases, but these albums are the ones I listen to least. The This was a long one. Lee Jacob. They're the most underrated of the 2000s albums, and also the weakest but still strong albums. Okay. They don't have the aggression found on the previous release of Dying for the World, nor the sorrowful, gut-wrenching tunes like Hallowed Ground or the haunting Trail of Tears. I'll agree with that.
Yes.
The mixing is odd. I have to fine-tune my system a little bit to get the sound where I like it. Mike Duda delivers some really good gallops and has some rapid-fire bass on this album. The man is Blackie's secret weapon and holds down modern-day W.A.S.P's musical foundation in a way that rivals Steve Harris. I agree, Lee Jacob. That is great stuff here.
Excellent.
He keeps going. The story is more ambitious and intriguing than the Crimson Idol, but it's not as personal and doesn't strike at the soul of so many people seeking a missing part of their soul. I think if this got into the right audience, I think there might be some folks out there that could really connect with this thing. Each album is chock full of solid tunes: Ecstasy Riders, Sister Sadie, What I'll Never Find, Wishing Well, and my personal favorite, Asylum Number 9, Stand Out on the Rise. And then he goes into the to the Demise. So I'll save that again. Daryl Roberts was a solid guitarist and held his own playing Kulik's stuff live. However, I feel like the solos on so many of these tunes are uninspired and at times repetitive. The rhythm section shines on both albums and at times really carries these two albums. I'll agree with that as well.
Yes.
At times, I feel like the songs took too much from Crimson Idol Recipe, and Blackie didn't have the players to deliver. Daryl is good, but I feel like someone like Blair or Kulik could have elevated these albums to new heights. They're both masters at infusing emotion into their work. That's the next level, and I give both volumes 7.5 out of 10. So that's some great thoughts, Lee. I appreciate those thoughts. Paul Southern also mentions basically I had always said this. So okay, so that is what the W.A.S.P Nation says. So a lot to digest here. A lot of people seem to like the same kind of songs that we liked.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are critical of the mix, the mastering, and the overall production. So I can kind of, because like I said, even in my headphones, they are kind of noisy. Even in the car, they're kind of, just taking them from Spotify or my iTunes playlist. It's a noisy. They're kind of noisy, but it's a good noisy. But it's almost a little too much for my ears for the headphones. But so yeah, if these ever got a proper reissue and a proper remix and mastering, I would love to hear it. I think they would sound really, 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 really good. So there you go, folks. That is the Neon God, The Rise. Next week, we will talk about The Demise. So, for John the Music Nut, my fellow gazer into the wishing well, my fellow running man, my fellow ecstasy rider, my Jesse to my Judah. This is John Clauser, Johnny Metal, the Metal Dad, coming to you from my music corner of the world. Like, share, subscribe. Let us know what you think of the Neon God. And I thank you. We both thank you for the support and the comments and everything that you have thrown your way towards this series. We appreciate that you like these things so much. So until next week, when we go into the Demise, we'll see you soon.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.